Welcome to the Athletic FC podcast with me, Ayo Akinwolere. Trent Alexander-Arnold is leaving Liverpool. So why has he decided to leave on a free transfer? And with Real Madrid the likely destination, what makes them the better option? All right, here with us today, we have our Liverpool correspondent, James Pearce, Real Madrid correspondent, Mario Cortegana, and Tomas Hill, Lopez-Menchero as well. James, I'm coming straight to you on this one. I mean, look, we almost expected this, really. I mean, it's no surprise, really. I mean, I was holding on to those moments when he was at Anfield singing "You Never Walk Alone" with the crowd, thinking maybe he might make a U-turn. But Trent Alexander-Arnold is leaving Liverpool. How did we get here? Come on, break it down.
Yeah, I think there's a whole load of factors that have kind of contributed to, as you said, with it. Today is essentially just official confirmation of what we've known for a few months. It's been the direction of travel. Probably, I think certainly from January onwards, off the back of Real Madrid's approach to try and buy him in the January window, everything just pointed to this being the outcome. In terms of how we got to this point, I think you have to factor in the upheaval behind the scenes at Liverpool in recent years. I think you go back to the summer of 2023 when he had 2 years left on his contract. Up to that point in his professional career, he'd never got down to his last 2 years. There'd been renewals in 2017, 2019, 2021, with Liverpool repeatedly kind of recognising his development and growing importance to the team. But of course, that was a summer when Julian Ward stepped down as sporting director. They couldn't get a full-time replacement or one they thought was good enough. So they went with Jörg Schmadtke as a stopgap, an interim appointment. And his job was very much just to do transfer deals. And then, of course, kick on 3-4 months after that, Jurgen Klopp decides he's going to go at the end of the season. That's kept quiet till the end of January. Then, of course, everything is placed on hold because, any player is going to want to say, in any contract talk, is going to want to know, well, who's the manager? And what does he think of me and where does he see me in his plans? So that was kind of how we reached last summer with Trent only having, a year left. And it was actually just before the end of last season that Liverpool opened talks with Richard Hughes as a new sporting director back end of April 2024. One of Hughes's first phone calls in the job was to Alexander-Arnold's camp. That was how important he knew trying to keep him was. Opening offer went in before the end of April, but those talks dragged on and on during the season, and ultimately that's led to where we are now.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about the little video he played out a little later on, because I'm sure this was not an easy decision for Trent Alexander-Arnold. But Mario, let's come to you. How close is he now to agreeing a deal with Real Madrid? It's so interesting. Nothing has been formally announced, obviously, because this is such a sensitive situation. And who knows whether he is still going to Real Madrid. But what are the whispers you were hearing?
Yeah, but hello, everyone. Just before starting to recording this podcast, I've been talking to Real Madrid sources and also asking about Trent potentially playing the Club World Cup with Los Blancos. They were like confirming the deal without doing not word by word, but speaking as he's already a Real Madrid player, so it's a matter of time. And as James was saying, and we have been reporting, this was the direction of the travel since a lot of time ago. Actually, Madrid sources were confident about getting Trent Alexander-Arnold since November, when I was speaking with to them. Obviously, it's a huge addition for Real Madrid.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that, Thomas. Look, yet again, probably another worst kept secret in the world of football, but who knows? I'm going to keep the jeopardy going. But how big a signing could this be for Real Madrid, as Mario has just said?
Yeah, it's really big. Obviously, Dani Carvajal has been out for most of the season with an ACL injury. His replacement, Lucas Vazquez, has struggled at times, has kind of borne the brunt of fan criticism. I think defence in general is one of those positions where Real Madrid haven't necessarily covered themselves totally in recent years. Eder Militao, probably the only one who you think has lots of his best years ahead of him, we hope, even after 2 ACL injuries. So yeah, it's going to be massive. I think it will give them cover in a really important position, and obviously it's a star addition in many ways. Worth saying as well that Alexander-Arnold is joining a club who look very different from this time last year, when we kind of thought they were going to be dominating European football for years to come, having just won La Liga, Champions League. It's very different now, managerial uncertainty as we've spoken about, so be interesting to see how he adapts and what kind of club he's coming into.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think about the club he's also leaving, James. Liverpool, what have you made of how this has all been handled, really? And I think there's been a fair few juggling acts happening. We talked about the Mo Salah contract. We've talked about the Virgil van Dijk contract. This was the third one we were hoping they'd be able to wrap up. How do you think Liverpool have handled this, and Trent himself?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, out of the 3 contract situations, this was always the toughest challenge facing Richard Hughes when he started at Anfield, just over a year ago, because I think you only have to look at the kind of the public statements during the season that where Van Dijk and Salah were repeatedly very clear that their preference was to stay put, and of course at completely different stages of their career, there wasn't a huge amount of noise about other clubs being in for them, aside from obviously the ongoing Saudi interest in Salah. Yet there was Trent, 26, coming into his peak, a massively valuable asset who we knew and Liverpool knew was being actively pursued by Real Madrid. So yeah, I think it's fair to kind of ask questions about why on earth did Liverpool let it get down to the last year. I don't think it's fair to criticise Richard Hughes, because I think even those close to Trent have only got good things to say about Richard Hughes, and have said that he did everything he possibly could. The offers Liverpool made, Trent would have made it. Well, he certainly would have been the highest paid fullback in the Premier League, would have been one of the highest paid fullbacks in world football. I don't, from the people I've spoken to, this wasn't a financial decision. It wasn't like Liverpool didn't push the boat out enough to kind of recognise his status in the world game. And as Trent has said himself today, it was ultimately that desire to, step out of his comfort zone, pursue a new challenge, things that Liverpool just couldn't offer him. That was ultimately what this came down to.
Yeah, and when do you think Liverpool sort of resigned to the fact that he was leaving? Because, from us, our perspective, and I'm sure journalists potentially have a different view on this, from the fan perspective, you're thinking there's still a little something going on in the background. Maybe not. When do you think Liverpool generally thought, and probably Slot was thinking, I'm not going to have this kid next season? His mind's already made up. Yeah,
I think certainly when there was the approach from Real Madrid that actually arrived on December the 30th, it then leaked out into the media on New Year's Eve, but it was December the 30th that Real Madrid made that approach to sign Alexander-Arnold. And I think although those close to the player are adamant he didn't encourage or invite that approach, of course he knew how much Real Madrid wanted him at that point, and we know how football works, that you don't, unless you've had reason to believe that someone, is interested in you, not necessarily to join you then, because I certainly believe that Alexander-Arnold didn't want to leave mid-season, because I think he would have known that really would have damaged his legacy at the club. But, certainly by that point, and as Mario said, the noises coming out of Madrid were, we might not get him in January, but it's just a question of, well, we'll have to sit tight and take him for free in the summer. And then in terms of, officially the talks didn't end with Liverpool until early March. That's my understanding, that early March was when, they effectively ground to a halt. And then it was during the March international break that Alexander-Arnold went and knocked on Slot's door at the Kirby training centre and basically told him that I've decided, I've made my mind up that I'm going to be leaving when my contract expires. And apparently I'm told that conversation was very, very civil, and, Slot obviously said he was disappointed, but from a personal perspective, said he understood and wished him well, and made it clear that once he was fit, because at the time Trent was injured, that he would still have a part to play. And he said, let's just finish this chapter together on a high. And of course, they've done that with wrapping up the title.
Academy graduate to two-time Premier League winner, not forgetting the 2019 Champions League winner, that special quick corner taken. A lot has been spoken, James, about, this year already about what leaving on a free will mean for Liverpool. And I think fans have had their voice on that too. How do you expect this news will be received by Liverpool fans and football fans in general, actually?
I think it will divide opinions, certainly amongst Liverpool fans. I mean, ones that I speak to regularly, friends, I know lots of people that their attitude is good luck to him. He arrived at the age of 6. He's devoted 20 years of his life to his boyhood club. He made over 350 appearances, won the Champions League, 2 Premier Leagues, the FA Cup, 2 League Cups, the Super Cup and the Club World Cup.
He's well decorated, isn't he?
Yeah, he's won the lot. It's crazy, and to boot, he's broken the Premier League record for most assists ever by a defender on 64, and so I think that there is that school of thought that he's reached that from what he's given this club, that he's entitled to do what he wants, and if that is what is going to fulfill him as a player, then so be it. But obviously there is another camp, as you said. I think for a lot of people, the fact that he's leaving for nothing, that grates. Although I think it's far too simplistic. Some people have said, he should have committed to a new contract with a release clause and everything else. And it's like, just look at the way that Real Madrid operate. If they would have made it abundantly clear that you have to run down your contract. You look at, people like Rudiger and Alaba and obviously Mbappe as well, that so that wasn't an option open to him. And for a lot of people, obviously they think, well, why would a lad from the West Derby area, Liverpool, who has talked about potentially being Liverpool captain one day, why would he want to walk away from that? And also, why walk away from a title winning team? Because previously, when especially McManaman and Michael Owen would be the 2 perfect examples who have made the same journey from Liverpool to Madrid, but they could both turn around and say, well, I want to win stuff. I want to be competitive, and this team I'm part of doesn't look like they're going to win anything anytime soon. Of course, Trent can't say that because Liverpool have just won their 20th league title, but as he said himself in his kind of goodbye video, for him, this is the perfect sign-off, that it's almost like he's achieved everything he wants to do at Liverpool. He's not leaving because he's frustrated about the lack of ambition at the club. He just wants to try something new, and I guess it's difficult to begrudge him that.
Yeah, I mean, Mario, if you are going to try something new, well, Real Madrid is not a bad place to try something new. I mean, James just saying, Premier League titles, Champions League, domestic trophies, I can't help but think, although a lot of people might not see him like that in the world of football, this is the kind of old Galactico kind of player Real Madrid used to buy. Well decorated, great experience. Surely this would be a big boost for Real Madrid, considering the season they are having this year.
Yeah, of course. And as James was mentioning, Real Madrid are famous for spending a lot of money in signings, but if you check the last years, they have been the masters on signing about signing players in the last years of their contracts. James mentioned Rudiger, Alaba, of course Mbappe, and there are a lot of more. And they are targeting these kind of players with this contract situation. And of course, he's seen as one of the best right back in the world, and the fact that they are landing him from such a big club like Liverpool, from the Premier League, it's very important for Madrid, not just in terms of football, of course, he's a top player, but also they expect to have a big impact in their brand, meaning again, signing a Liverpool star, a Premier League star, and England national team star, it's something massive from Real Madrid, and especially if they are landing him as a free agent. By the way, Real Madrid didn't have problems on spending in January. First of all, because they really needed a right back. We have reported that quote from a coaching staff source saying that what I know is that we will not be able to win the Champions League without a proper right back. And second, because they wanted to respect Trent and they wanted to show respect Liverpool, meaning they wouldn't be like the bad guy in that film. Like, we are getting your star for free. No, if you are open to get some money for Trent Alexander-Arnold, then we are happy to spend some money in January. But as we reported, Liverpool rejected that option in January.
Yeah, I mean, Thomas, I don't know how much respect there can be. I mean, let's be honest. We've reported it. They've been chatting for a while, and they're even trying to snatch him in January. But, this is an interesting one. Mario makes a great point. And I think we've had this chat before about how Real Madrid are starting to conduct their business at this moment in time. These are players that would naturally go for very, very high fees. If you get them a year before the end of their contract, or dare I say, a free, that's great business. You might have to pay the wages, but actually you're not paying that transfer fee.
Yeah, Mario wrote quite extensively on the stages of a Real Madrid market opportunity signing. I think when there were rumblings of this as well in, I think it was January, but obviously it's rumbled on for a long time. I think particularly in defence, it's clear that's what's happened with Alaba, with Rudiger. I'd say Alexander-Arnold is definitely more of the calibre of Mbappe, a player joining at the absolute peak of his career with his best years ahead of him. I think Rudiger was 29 when he joined Madrid, and Alexander-Arnold 26. Yeah, again, clearly world class at this moment and ready to slot in right away. And maybe it is a way of competing a bit with the riches of the Premier League. I think certainly the Madrid hierarchy for years, I think it's been clear that with the Bernabeu rebuild, which I think now stands at something like 1.76 billion euros, that took its toll. The pandemic as well, and then again, kind of these clubs like Manchester City, PSG, with all these riches. Well, this is a kind of way of competing with them and still attracting the biggest players, which I think Madrid will always do because of the name, really.
Yeah, for sure. And Mario, I don't think. Look, I'm just putting myself in the shoes of an elite footballer. I will never be one, but let me just dream for a minute. If Real Madrid come calling on my door, I mean, what a lifestyle, huh? You're living in Madrid. You've got all these international players, some of the best young players around you. And also, I feel like if Trent Alexander-Arnold would like to see himself as the greatest or one of the greatest right backs in the world, there's no bigger pressure than one of the best teams, or if not the best team in the world, to try and prove yourself. What else do you think is the draw of Real Madrid for Trent Alexander-Arnold?
Yeah, it's very challenging for Trent. There were boys inside the Real Madrid, and when they heard Trent speaking about the Ballon d'Or, they were like, hey, he really wants to join us, because it's like, what is bigger, especially for a Liverpool lad like Trent, bigger than Liverpool? Maybe just Real Madrid. Maybe it's the single club he would really consider to join after for leaving Liverpool. And we all can feel that Real Madrid still have this appeal to everyone. And you have the new Bernabeu, all the stars, Mbappe, Vinicius, his friend Bellingham, the pressure. I think hearing and reading from Trent, he really wants to be challenged. He, as James reported, he asked Slot to be really demanding with him. He really wants to improve. He really wants to develop himself even more. And I think there is no, respecting James, of course, and Liverpool FC, there is no better place for that than Real Madrid. So let's see how he does from now on.
Yeah, I mean, look, how much of a factor is this one, James? Because, I mean, I don't think anyone puts more pressure on Trent Alexander-Arnold than Liverpool fans themselves, but this is a different kettle of fish. Real Madrid, I mean, we've spoken about this several times. Some of these players can be hung out in very various ways. Do you think that's the kind of pressure that he's ready to take on his shoulders?
I certainly think it would have been part of his decision-making process. I mean, whether, how he deals with that is going to be so interesting to see next season, because I think Simon's right. It will be very different. Liverpool fans have had his back in a way that I don't think that will exist at Real Madrid, because a lot is going to be expected of him, and I think if he doesn't live up to sky high standards that are expected there on a weekly basis, that people will pounce on that, and obviously the scrutiny and analysis of it, and the pressure and everything else. I think that's going to be an interesting factor in this, because that is part of the deal, isn't it? When you cut your ties with your boyhood club, and there's Liverpool fans, it's always been this talk, hasn't it, of like, he can't defend, which has always been ridiculous, because you look at his list of honours, the idea that you win what he's won if you can't defend is nonsensical. And I think there's always been this sense of some people being far keener to talk about what he can't do rather than the incredible things he can do. But yeah, it is. You can't get away from the fact that he won't. I suppose protected, is the right word. He won't be protected there in the same way as he probably has been at Anfield, where, when he has come in for stick, especially probably on the international stage, and you think about all the noise around him, at the Euros, and it felt like Southgate had hung him out to dry a little bit by, the midfield experiment that then he completely ditched and moved away from. And, it was almost like Liverpool was home, wasn't it? It was like we come back to Liverpool and, it was like, the collective arm being put around you, and, don't worry, we've got your back. That now won't exist at Madrid.
Yeah, for sure. Thomas, look, he won't be the first player from the Premier League to go to Real Madrid. I mean, I was just thinking about Gareth Bale, like as brilliant as he was, there wasn't that connection with the Madrid fans in the same way, perhaps because he didn't choose to speak Spanish. That's a whole different conversation. But, Eden Hazard looked to have a tricky time at Madrid and settling into that culture in many respects. Do you think it might be slightly easier that at least Trent's now got an ally like maybe Bellingham, who's been there, done that, and has actually allowed him to ease himself in a bit better in comparison to the two I've just mentioned?
I think that will help in terms of the dressing room dynamics, but in terms of the stadium, the Bernabeu, I mean, our colleague Guillermo Rai wrote a really nice piece this weekend about whistling at the Bernabeu, what's behind it, why are fans so demanding? Everyone's been whistled there. Mbappe, Ronaldo, even Di Stefano, one of the greatest players in Madrid's history. So he won't be immune from that if mistakes happen. Often I think it's very unfair when that happens to players. They're just singled out for either mistakes in previous games. Often the reasons are kind of, there's so many reasons and you can't really pinpoint one. I think you're right in saying with Bale the language played a part. I do think speaking Spanish and kind of ingratiating yourself with fans, really embedding yourself in the culture, goes a long way. I mean, Bellingham's spoken about his struggles with Spanish, but actually in sort of embracing everything that Madrid is about and talking about it in interviews, I think he's really endeared himself to fans. So I'm sure, Bellingham will be able to teach him a thing or two about how to win over the fan base.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you've spoken to Steve McManaman, James, and I just wondered how much of a sounding board someone like that could actually be for Trent, even Michael Owen to a certain degree.
Yeah. I mean, I doubt, because of the kind of, obviously wanting to keep it under wraps until he'd until the title was won. I think that was important to Trent, because he didn't want to create that kind of, any more noise around his future. You wonder whether now, those conversations might take place if they hadn't already. Because when I spoke to McManaman a few months ago, he was very much in the camp of, he said, if this deal happens as it looks like it will do, you should be celebrating the fact that this local lad from the West Derby area, Liverpool, has been recruited by the biggest club in the world, and that it's after he was very much in the kind of the regard that after giving Liverpool so much for 20 years, he'd earned the right to decide whatever he wanted to do. And of course, McManaman was an interesting situation, because it was the back end of the 90s. When the Bosman ruling had just come in, so he got a lot of stick, McManaman, because the idea of someone leaving on a free, then people were still trying to get their heads around it. But, even with that, McManaman, explained to me that, Liverpool had tried to sell him previously. And he said, people, loyalty has to kind of work both ways in those situations. And certainly for him as well, it was like, well, how far away is this team going to be from winning stuff? So it was a different situation in that regard. But I think what hasn't changed, over all those years is the lure of Madrid, because when you speak to McManaman, he absolutely loved testing himself in a new environment, a new league, learning the language, a different culture. And of course, he proved to be one of, English football's most successful exports with the trophies he won there.
That then does make it quite interesting how they look to replace Trent Alexander-Arnold in terms of what they're sort of losing as well. I know people have spoken about the defending ability necessarily. I think he's a solid defender, but it's that passing ability and that creativity that they might have to think about. Or perhaps they just go for a solid right back who just bombs forward and thinks about defending more. I don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think what is absolutely crystal clear is you can't just go and recruit another Trent Alexander-Arnold, because I think his skill set from that position is pretty unique. And and Liverpool are losing one of their most creative forces. I think it's possibly less of a blow now, I think, than it would have been in the Klopp era, when under Klopp so much of Liverpool's attacking play went through Trent. I think under Slot, it's a more controlled, more possession-based game. We've seen more creative spark from the midfield, and we've also seen Trent being asked to play as a more kind of authentic right back rather than just the free reign that he'd had at times previously. So yeah, I just think that the team is just going to have to evolve. I think it will, it's interesting because we know that Liverpool are certainly looking to recruit on the left side of defence. Kirkes at Bournemouth is certainly of great interest to them. Most likely that Tsimikas leaves and they strengthen at left back. I think at right back, it is tricky because Conor Bradley is a sensational young talent, and I think that's another reason why for a lot of Liverpool fans they'll think it's not quite as big a setback losing Trent as maybe it would have been a couple of years ago, because even at Chelsea on Sunday in a game that meant nothing, Conor Bradley lit the place up in the second half with his cameo. The only issue with Bradley is keeping him fit, because he has had a number of kind of more minor muscle injuries than anything serious. But of course, he's going from being a backup who steps in at times to probably asking him to play 30, 40 times a season, which he hasn't done at the highest level in his career so far. So yeah, Liverpool are going to have to look at their options in the market. I know Frimpong has been mentioned as a possibility. They've obviously they've also got another possibility would be if they bring in Dean Huijsen from Bournemouth, that gives them another option in the middle. That then you've got Kwanzaa or Joe Gomez that could potentially deputise at right back. But yeah, I think the thing is this: Liverpool will have been planning for this for quite a while, because as we said earlier on, it's not a bolt from the blue. They have known that this was the most likely outcome, I think, probably for most of the season.
Yeah, very quickly before we go, Mario, we have to talk about Carlo Ancelotti. It looks like he's set to leave Real Madrid this summer. It looks like it's going to be a very busy summer in Madrid.
Yeah, Real Madrid are combing the market to reinforce a lot of position. You have, of course, the right back with the addition of Trent Alexander-Arnold, but they are looking at the left back as well. James mentioned Kirkes regarding Liverpool, so keep an eye to Real Madrid.
Oh, not another one. Don't do this.
Stay away from him.
You've
done enough trouble.
There are some names under consideration, such as Benfica's Álvaro Carreras. You probably know well from his days at Manchester United. There is also Kirkes. There is always the option of Girona's Miguel Gutiérrez. And yeah, they are also studying the market for a centre back. Be careful with Dean Huijsen.
Huijsen as well, no!
And so,
What are you doing to us, Mario? Don't do this.
as we have reported, and David Ornstein said, there are Premier League clubs, including, of course, Liverpool, working on the deal more actively. I wouldn't discard even a midfielder, but I have more doubts about that. Let's see also what could bring the arrival of the new coach. We expect the Xabi Alonso is in the pole position, so let's see how much voice he has on the decision making.
For sure, you haven't even mentioned Zubimendi and those links as well, but I'll leave you there, Mario, because let's let you go before James gets more annoyed. He's still excited after Liverpool winning the Premier League. Anyway, gents, thank you so much for your time. Mario, James, and Thomas as well. Thanks so much for your insight. Really important to have you on. And also thank you guys for listening and watching. Head over to The Athletic for even more on this huge story. We'll be back tomorrow. If you want to watch more episodes of the show, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season. If you'd like to listen to the episodes in full in audio form, search The Athletic FC wherever you get your podcasts from.